This video will contain spoilers for the entire numbered Xenoblade Chronicles trilogy. In addition to largely redeeming the game's challenge mode, DLC Wave 3 also brings us Masha, who has a surprisingly interesting amount of stuff in her quest. And while a surprising amount of that is actually more Xenoblade 2 fanservice beyond what we expected to get from Ino, there's also a lot more that is not only city lore, but also city lore that may very well hint towards elements of Wave 4's expansion story, which we'll get later this year, because it's pretty clear that it's going to revolve around the city to some degree. That is beyond obviously why everyone's watching this video, so I'm just gonna get the little tidbits of challenge mode stuff out of the way first. At this point, they have thrown away all pretense and are basically outright admitting that the Nopon Archsage is the most powerful character in the entire Xenoblade series, explicitly crediting him with creating the Archsage's gauntlet, a mysterious space that has rules of battle differing to those governing Ionios, so bare minimum, he is more powerful than Zed with Origin. He's even capable of restricting Lucky 7 to a higher degree than Zed with Origin was, as in hard mode, you cannot bring it in to gauntlet battles until you purchase a license for it using the new currency that drops. The Archsage Gauntlet tutorial is also the first instance of the party explicitly being referred to as Ouroboros. Now, you might think that's wrong, because people call the characters Ouroboros a lot, but it's possibly, arguably, just referring to them as the 6 people who happen to have Ouroboros powers at the present moment in time, and not explicitly referring to them as a group. It's referring to Ouroboros, not the party, if that makes sense. Basically, this is the first time out of explicit in-game canon where the Xenoblade 3 party is officially referred to as Ouroboros, so we can now use that as the official name for this party, which is nice because this is the first time since arguably X where a Xenoblade party has had an official name. As X, you were technically Team Elma the entire time, and 1 and 2 never really got official name for their party, so this is nice. It's official shorthand for something in this series, which we don't get a lot, so I'm very happy about that. While the gauntlet is a major step up from Time Attack, it does still reuse enemies, so I can't really talk about any additional lore or stuff in it. It's just the Archsage making a special space where you can go through a roguelike gauntlet, and he's capable of buffing and debuffing your stats, pulling heroes in, and I guess resurrecting dead Mobius to make you fight them again, which is, again, he is ludicrously powerful, and more people need to be talking about that. But beyond that, even the bragging rights accessory you get for clearing the final gauntlet on hard, and the joke item you get for clearing it on hard again in New Game Plus, aren't really anything super special, so the only thing challenge mode related left to talk about is Drip, because we got 2 new outfits for every member of Ouroboros. These outfits are titled the Throwback series, and as such are references to previous Xenoblade games, with fittingly the Keves characters getting Xenoblade 1 references, and the Agnes characters getting Xenoblade 2 references. The initial set was shown in a trailer, so I don't really need to say much about this. Noah's is a combination of Shulk and a Kevesi soldier uniform. Mio's is a combination of her mother Nea's blade outfit from Xenoblade 2 with an Agni and Offseer outfit. Uni's combines Ham's Fiora's outfit from Xenoblade 1 with Melia's outfit from Future Connected. Tyon's is a reference to Jin's Flesh Eater outfit from Xenoblade 2, which I don't think anyone was expecting for him. Lanz's is a combination of Rhine, fitting because he is very much the Rhine of this game, as well as a little bit of Egil and just general Xenoblade 1 Machina design, which makes sense because, you know, he's a Machina, and there's not really a lot of classic Machina references throughout Xenoblade 3. And Senna's is a reference to Brigid from Xenoblade 2, as she shares several similar characteristics. Unfortunately, the Throwback B outfits are just recolors of the Throwback A outfits and not unique new models, so the references, if they do even exist to them, are a lot subtler, so I'm going to try my best. Noah's gives him a white and light blue color scheme, which, as far as I can tell, doesn't reference any alternate Shulk outfits and does not match Fiora, even though her main color in Xenoblade 1 is white, so I'm guessing it's either giving a Keves character a more Agnian-looking color scheme, or just a reference to similar outfits Shulk has in Xenoblade 1 that are just white recolors of his default. Mio's B outfit basically just turns the white stuff red and the black leggings white. This one is pretty simple. It is a reference to Sincere Primrose Nia, which was one of Blade Nia's alternate outfits from the Xenoblade 2 DLC, which in and of itself was a reference to Charla from Xenoblade 1. Yunie's turns things green, and as far as I can tell, this is just Yunie's regular color scheme applied to this alternative outfit, because there's really no other place where I see that green anywhere else in the series. Tion's B is very interesting because it's either Jin's normal colors on his Flesh Eater outfit, or a reference to the black and purple outfit that Malos wears, with the purple specifically coming from his Power and Aegis Core. Which, hey, if Senna can be Morag and Bridget's daughter, Tion can totally be Jin and Malos' son. Lance's B outfit is primarily white and gold, and this one I do think is supposed to be a Fiora reference because the gold color is virtually identical to her mechanized appearance, so yeah, we do get a Fiora, and it's the guy who is already a robot and not the guy who had the Shulk outfit, which is kind of weird because Shulk had a Fiora alt in Smash, but I guess only Xenoblade 2 is allowed to actually take stuff from Smash. Senna's is just orangey gold, and I definitely have nothing for this one because it doesn't match any of Bridget's alts, it doesn't match Morag, which would be the obvious other thing to reference with the Senna outfit, it doesn't reference any of the hammer blades from Xenoblade 2, or really any party member. There aren't really orange characters besides Rhine, who already got a reference throughout the entire series, and I mean Tion, but he's already in 3. So yeah, this one's either a dud or something I'm not noticing, because it's clear that if it's a reference, it's to a Xenoblade thing. No other outfits have been Gears or Saga references, but yeah, that's Senna. Unfortunately, she gets the short end of the stick once again. I'm not sure if I should even be surprised anymore. Anyway, though, this brings us to Masha, clearly the main star of this as far as lore goes, because she is a city resident, and we learn a surprising amount of stuff about the city through her quest. She's first introduced trying to get on a transport, but the operator does not want to let her without a platoon of soldiers, automatically showing that she's someone clearly important, and if you pay attention to city lore from the base game, you'd know that she has to be a member of one of the 6 major houses. Given the way she addresses Monica, Guernica, and the Van Dams in general, it's pretty clear that she's not a member of that house, but we don't actually learn which one she is from until the Ascension quest, and I'm gonna hold off on it as well, because knowing it makes everything beforehand make surprisingly more sense when you look back at it. She's portrayed as a competent fighter despite not dressing like a Lost Numbers member, and has a much more free spirit and not dedication to traditional city ideals, seeming like she clashes with the general ideals of House Van Dam as a whole, and pursues beauty in all things. You also immediately get her in the affinity chart and can see that she is 27 years old, so a bit younger than Monica, which might play into the specific attitude towards her she has, if she had to see her as an older, more competent, more authoritative person at all in the past when they were growing up. Masha brings the party to the Aegis Wilderness because annihilation events occur there frequently, and she's after the result of one. Said result is the new mineral, which is dubbed Enigmatter, a compound formed by the intense energy of an annihilation event. Basically, think of it like a higher energy version of lightning striking sand and turning it into glass, except because of the unique properties of annihilation events, it interlaces several minerals together into a brand new thing. Basically, a non-living form of interlinking that creates something completely new out of the two worlds. Masha is a self-stylized lapidarist extraordinaire, and she might just be that, if only by default because no one else in Ionios is one, but at the very least she certainly is a lapidarist, which is someone who works with stones and gems, specifically engraving, cutting, and polishing. Because she's also a big fan of beauty, she wants to look for unique things that can bring a new spin on stuff, which is why she was after the Enigmatter, because it's a very unique thing and nothing else really looks like it in the world because it is a brand new creation, basically. This also does pretty heavily hint that the big green stone she has on her chest is just part of her big elaborate necklace and not actually a core crystal, which is somewhat backed up by the fact that she gives the party Kavesi arts with her class, despite spoilers being from one of the Agnes-associated houses. Yunie does not seem impressed by her craft, but Mio is intrigued a little bit, and Masha takes a shine to her, giving her the accessory that is made with the enigmator, which is basically just a tutorial for how her special gimmick works. She then states that the important thing to know about her is that she lives as she pleases, and Tyon says it's not a very city-like mentality, to which Masha agrees, but also says that different thoughts and beliefs are what makes humans human, and then goes on to describe how House Van Damme marches on Mobius waving the banner of war, and House Doyle stays back putting the city's preservation above all else, but that not every pacifist in the city thinks the same way a Doyle was, of course singling out herself, which is obviously a major hint that she's not a Van Damme or a Doyle, and we'll be able to cross another house off the list before we get the actual reveal later on. She describes the city as a melting pot and says that her belief is that one day, everyone's different thoughts, ideals, and specialties, basically, will eventually blend together to create a special harmony that is greater than the sum of its parts. And while, yes, that is probably correct in the long term, it isn't correct for the actual city because, you know, the end of Xenoblade 3 happens. Masha then offers to enter in an exclusive contract with the party, because, you know, the player needs to gain access to her accessory crafting long term, and takes a special shine to Mio, saying she has the making of a model, which is very interesting. We'll get back to that later again, but obviously the party eventually agrees and Masha joins permanently. Despite using Kavesi arts, her class is primarily based on Fiora and the Twin Ring class from Xenoblade 2, being a healer that uses dual chakrams, which Fiora's 2 knife class reused animations from, and also healing a lot based on critical hits, which is another thing Fiora did. So again, very, very interesting. I think the oblique Fiora referencing could be some way to tie it back to her having Kavesi arts, but the fact that she fights using Driver Nia's primary class and then gives said class to Mio could mean something. I also forgot to mention earlier, but in the dub, Masha uses gratuitous French a little bit, which is really funny to me, not because of anything that has to do with the game itself, but specifically because my original crack theory was that Mobius was going to all have French accents, because fighting the French would be the only way to get 2 warring British countries to agree on something, but Masha's just an eccentric city person, and not actually a real enemy of anything, and we don't even see Mobius in this quest. Anyway, the Ascension quest begins back in the city when Masha is approached by Tessa and Jake. They're a couple who's been searching for her because they want an update on a commission they ordered a while ago, one that Masha seems to have forgotten about. I don't know why, but despite their really minor role, I like both of these characters. The fact that they have different goofy nicknames for Masha is really endearing, and the fact that Masha is completely okay with that also paints more of a picture of her personality, which we were able to glean from the first quest as well. Tessa's voice is also extremely familiar to me. I know I've heard it before, but I can't quite place it, so if anyone could figure that out, I would very much appreciate it. Masha's method for making a unique commission for every client is going around gathering information about them from people close to them, and we play through this, which is where we get a bizarrely large and interesting amount of city lore. One member of the Lost Numbers says that the couple are basically celebrities amongst the company, and then also reveals that the city is even more elitist than we'd initially thought. Certain circles outright look down on people like Jake who can't trace their lineage back to one of the 6 big houses, even having a term houseless for them. Because of this, Jake was bullied a lot as a child, and Tessa looking after him and standing up for him is what allowed them to become close in the first place. Another Lost Number reveals that Tessa is from House Rhodes, and as far as I can tell, that makes her the only member of said house that we actually meet in-game. They also reveal that Rhodes is sort of a third party in the big argument between Van Damme's and Doyle's differing philosophies, because they don't want to do anything with either of them. However, Tessa wants to take the fight to Mobius, so she has a much more Van Damme-like personality, which led to conflict with her parents. The third Lost Number tells a story about how Jake went against orders to save Tessa's life, and while it's cute and shows just how strong of a bond the two have, it doesn't really provide any additional lore, so it's outside the scope of this video. The party reconvenes to discuss, and the first topic of conversation is how their story is a lot more serious than had initially been thought, and Lanz comes very, very close to actually quoting Ryan. After a little bit of thought, Masha decides what she wants to make for them and sends the party out to gather materials. The first is an ultra-high purity rose quartz known as Red Schorl, which can be gathered from Arithia Sea. This is mainly interesting because Schorl mushrooms are a collectible in Machna Forest in Xenoblade 1 that also returns in the Pentalus region where Mactha Wildwood is in Xenoblade 3. However, Corn Island is in Erythia, so it seems like this is a type of gemstone that was named after the Shoral Mushroom and doesn't have any direct connection to it. It's possible that because of weird ether crystals and stuff like that present in the original Aerith Sea from the Xenoblade 1 world, that's why this stuff is unique to Erythia. The second is a monster drop, Argentium from the Argent Ropal, which can be found in the Orion Tunnels. Now you might think, okay, we went to a Xenoblade 2 area, there's something named similar to Argentum, is this another reference? That is most likely not the case. It is simply just a reference to silver, as Argentum is silver in Latin. Where did Argentum Trade Guild come from? Well, in the Japanese version of Xenoblade 2, all of the major titans are named after one of the 7 deadly sins in Latin. In localization, they kept the theme, but spiced it up a little bit by not only changing the languages, but also making some of the references to the sins a little bit more metaphorical, hence avaritia, or avarice, or greed, being kept in Latin but changed to Argentum to reference silver, a valuable material historically used a lot in money. Returning to the city, Masha finishes the accessories, which are called contract bracelets. They have silver bands with red stones in them, so yeah, that completely tracks with the 2 materials we gathered. They're also extremely durable, and the silver will never tarnish, which means the bracelets will still be around long after the couple has died. This is, in fact, exactly what they wanted. They go on to confirm something we'd speculated at for a while. City residents too just dissolve into light when they die. We did see that with Guernica, but there were several reasons that could have been an exception. Since the 2 are lost numbers who could die at any time, they want something more tangible to be remembered by when they do eventually pass. They don't want to just be a statistic on a memorial wall, and this is honestly also going along with the war theming of Xenoblade 3, and I think is another instance of something very realistic being included in the game. Masha then says, and I'm going to quote this directly for added effect, "There is not in this life more beautiful and precious than a happy, cherished memory. And yet it is human nature that the more precious we perceive a thing, the more we fear it might be whisked away. Like these 2 here, they aren't the first city folk who wish to set their memories in stone, and certainly won't be the last. To leave something permanent, telling the world that they once lived. Their lives history writ, and spirits enshrined. A love that cannot be seen, immortalized in physical form. Therein lies the quintessence of my work as lapidarist extraordinaire." We then immediately get an explanation as for where that cheesy but ultimately earnest and good-natured speech about love and memory and the importance of all that stuff came from, because Jake says that Masha is in fact the head of House Cassini, the one descended from a protege of Rex. Understanding the value of memory, empathizing with people who just want it to be remembered that they existed in the first place, going scavenging or salvaging for materials to make accessories. This all makes perfect sense and I love it. Tyon then points out that this should effectively make her an equal to Monica in power, but Masha kinda brushes that off really. She succeeded the role as a formality because the former head unexpectedly decided to step down. Now, I don't think anything about that is going to be explored ever, just because unless this former head is somehow the same person who was around during the Founders, or like somehow is the actual original founder of House Cassini that we would meet in the story DLC, then we're never really gonna meet this person. It just goes to show more of Masha's attitude of being a free spirit who still looks out for people in her own specific way, that shows that she's definitely following the philosophy of Rex. Speaking of that, we get a very, very intriguing quote from Masha after this. "Free is the citizen who embraces their freedom." Now, it's not number 5 because it doesn't start with always be, but that sounds very much like a mildly tweaked to give a city spin on a rule from the Salvager's Code that we've never heard before. So my guess is that the code was in fact passed down as a set of guidelines to live by throughout House Cassini by Rex, or Rex's protege who became the founder, and since we know at least part of 1 through 7, I'm going to say free is the salvager who embraces their freedom is Rule 8. And yes, Masha even says, "Such has been our code for generations." She uses the word code. This has to at least be a reference to it. And then her final piece of philosophy is, so long as one forges one's own path in life, unbound by societal principles, my house's role is to respect and support them in it. This is obviously another very Rex thing to say, but more importantly, we kind of have official roles, or at least stereotypes, for 3 of the 6 houses. Cassini's is to respect and support people who live unbound by societal principles. Van Damme's is to take the fight to Mobius, and Doyle's is to kind of stand back a bit more and try and protect the city and build it up itself, without trying to expose everyone to potential danger. This makes the fact that we're getting a Founders-focused prequel DLC a lot more interesting, because now there's more things that we could see set up and easily understand how they got to the place we see 1,000 years later in the base game. This also opens the possibility for more things happening, like, say, all 6 founders outright agreeing on what their house's philosophies are going to be and how they're going to support the unique society of the city. And as such, we could possibly even learn the official roles of the other houses that we haven't been able to see in the game so far. Also, I just have to point out how ridiculous the Rex influence on the founders is at this point. Van Damme and Doyle are both directly descended from him through Mio, Cassini is a protege of his, and it's not even completely out of the picture that Rhodes is another one of his 2 children incarnated through the Flame Clock. Oh, and if we count the 7th founder, the 3 most likely possibilities are M, an incarnation of his daughter, Nia, Mio's mother, and Riku, who has his same hairstyle, so we're potentially looking at 5 out of 7, with the only ones definitely not connected to Rex being the one adopted by Shulk and the one who is explicitly a soldier of Keves. I kinda doubt that all of those are true, but it is extremely funny to think about. And yes, this does make the interest Masha shows in Mio all the funnier because she's just complimenting the daughter of the person who mentored the person to establish her house. Yes, the gray part of Masha's hair is very similar to Mio's, but we know as a fact she's not blood related to Rex in the first place, so there shouldn't be any blood connection there, that much is just a coincidence. Either way, this is not the balance of fan service I and many people expected from the expansion pass, but I don't think it's going to be unbalanced at all in the end. As I think when most people saw Ino, they figured, okay, she'll be the Xenoblade 2 fanservice hero, the second one will be the Xenoblade 1 fanservice hero, and then the expansion story will be a combination of the 2 of them. However, we ended up getting Xenoblade 2 fanservice from Ino, more Xenoblade 2 fanservice from Masha, though it's a bit more subtle and also tied to a lot of interesting city lore that's probably setting up stuff from the expansion story. And that might seem a little sus, but at the exact same time, we were shown the first teaser trailer for the expansion story, which not only showed that the main character is going to be a Xenogears reference, and not fanservice to 1 or 2 whatsoever, although, because he looks a lot like Noah, he is going to lean slightly closer on the one side, but also that Alvis, a returning Xenoblade 1 character, is going to be a big central part of the story. You might think that that would be enough to swing things back in the other direction and give 1 the most fan service. It's very, very likely that Alvis showing up here is going to tie back into him being part of the Trinity processor and to the multiverse and conduit related things that were established in Xenoblade 2. So while it seems like a 1 character is going to be a big central focus and the biggest not Xenoblade 3 related thing in the expansion story, there's still going to be some 2 ties as well. So ultimately, I really like the way they ended up doing this. Obviously, when we see more of the expansion, I could be proven very, very wrong, but I really like the way they decided to shape things up this way. It's a lot less rigid and formulaic than I expected, which gives them a lot more freedom to do more interesting things, like just having Alvis there in the first place. So I am very satisfied, honestly, with both Ino and Masha's content. Less so with the first wave of challenge mode, more so with the second wave of challenge mode, and still extremely excited for the story expansion to come. So look forward to videos that are not about that, because I already analyzed basically everything that can be analyzed about the little trailer, and hopefully I'll have time to make more videos before another trailer comes out. So until whatever I choose to upload or make public next, this has been Luxon, signing off. Like, comment, and subscribe, by the way.